Good morning. I'm Katie Akins with Arizona Farm Bureau Ag in the Classroom.
And I'm Alicia Gutierrez with Arizona Farm Bureau Ag in the Classroom.
And today we are so excited to be here with you to talk about our favorite thing. Food! Do you guys like food? Raise your hand if you like food.
I love food.
All the food. Now, can you guys tell us where food comes from?
The
Yes.
refrigerator, the
The
grocery
grocery
store,
store, the pizza place, all of those places is where food comes from. But is that where food begins? No.
I heard someone say farms, okay?
Of course, you know, if you have seen Miss Alicia or myself, we are always going to be talking about farmers and ranchers and agriculture. So it's important for us to remember that every time we are eating, those products started on the farmer ranch. And in fact, it's agriculture and our farmers and ranchers who are responsible for all of that food.
All the tasty food.
So today we thought it might be fun to learn the journey of some of that food that we love to eat. And we thought we'd do that by maybe reading a story.
Oh, I love reading stories.
Yeah, we always love reading stories. So our story today is called, How Did That Get in My Lunchbox? Raise your hand if you guys brought your lunch to school today. I brought my lunch.
Me too, I brought my lunch.
And I think we might get a sneak peek in these boxes here in a little bit. But let's begin with our story. How did that get in my lunchbox? The story of food. One of the best parts of the day is when you lift the lid of your lunchbox to see what's inside. Your parents have packed it with lots of tasty things to eat. They probably got all of the food from a grocery store. But food doesn't grow in stores. So where did it come from before it was in the store? Now, we kind of talked about that, right? In our little intro here. We know food doesn't come from the store, so where does food come from?
A farm.
The farms, right? So let's dive a little deeper. Just how did all this food get in your lunchbox? We've got a sandwich. My favorite, cookies.
Oh, little oranges.
Tomatoes.
Carrots.
And apple juice. Is that what's in your lunch? How did the bread in your sandwich get in your lunchbox? A farmer planted seeds in spring, and by summer they'd grown into tall, waving wheat with fat, ripe grains at the tip of every stalk. The farmer cut the wheat with a giant combine harvester and sent it to a flour mill. The miller ground the grains into flour, and trucks took the flour to a bakery. The baker mixed the flour with water, sugar, and yeast, kneaded it into a soft, squishy dough, and baked it in a very hot oven. Out came fresh loaves of bread, ready to send to the store. Take a bite of the bread in your sandwich. Crusty on the outside and soft in the middle. Okay, so let's talk about that crust, that bread for our sandwich. Where did we just learn that it came from?
From wheat.
From wheat. What does wheat look like, Miss Alicia?
Like this.
Right, it talked about those waving stalks of wheat. And one of the really cool things with wheat, we see it out there in the field, is to know where the seeds are for the wheat, because it's the seeds that we're actually eating of the wheat or processing to use for flour to make into doughs. So where would the seeds of that wheat be?
In here, like, can you guys see these little kernels?
It's called a wheat head.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where all of the seeds are located. And that's the part that we use for the flour, for the bread, for our sandwich. Now, maybe we don't eat the extras. But what do we use the wheat stalks for?
Ooh, we can use it for a lot of different things. Like
bedding for animals.
So they chop it up and they'll put it in the bedding for animals.
Mm-hmm. Look at this. We actually have some wheat seeds that have been taken out of the kernels. So see how they look just a little bit different? Super cool. Okay, so now we know this sandwich in our lunchbox is made using wheat.
Yeah, the bread,
from the farms.
The base of it, right?
The bread.
That's an important part of the sandwich. Is the bread.
All right, so let's find out what's next. How did the cheese in your sandwich get in your lunchbox? Your cheese was once milk that came from a cow. A farmer milked the cows, and a tanker from the dairy came to collect the milk. In the dairy, cheesemakers warmed up the milk and added bacteria to make it turn sour and thick. Then they added a substance that animals use to digest milk called rennet. And it changed again into bits called curds floating in whey. They drained off the whey, chopped up the rubbery curds, added some salt, and pressed them into blocks. They stored the blocks for months until the cheese was ripe. Bite into your cheese. It's creamy and smooth, but tasty too, and tingly on your tongue. Okay, so we just learned that we put cheese on our sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd that cheese come from?
Oh, milk, right? Mm-hmm. That comes from what animal?
Well, they heard it. A dairy farm,
cow,
even.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so the cheese comes from the dairy farm. But does the cheese really come from the dairy farm? What comes from the dairy farm? The milk. And then that milk has to be processed into cheese. So let's learn a little bit about those lovely ladies on the dairy who provide us with that delicious milk.
So when you guys think of a cow, what color do you usually think of?
Well, a dairy cow, I would say I probably think of black and white ones.
Yeah. So these cows,
Holsteins.
Right? It's a Holstein cow. Those are the most common dairy cows.
Can you guys say Holstein? Holstein. Very good.
Yeah. And so they are really good at producing milk. So that's why we use Holstein cows for most of the over 90% of all the dairy cows in the United States are Holstein.
And the Holstein cows, something that's pretty special about them is they are a larger cow, and they handle the heat really, really well. But they are good at their job, which is making milk. In fact, here in Arizona, they can average about 10 gallons of milk a day.
That's
each
a lot.
Cow. And that's a lot considering that the average size of our dairy here in Arizona is about 3,500 cows. So think about that. 3,500 cows times 10 gallons of milk a day.
That's a lot of milk.
That's a lot of milk, and in turn, a lot of cheese. But if you've been by an Arizona dairy, you might notice that they're not all the black and white Holsteins. Sometimes we see these really cute-eyed.
Those are my favorite.
Jerseys. Can you guys say Jersey? Jersey. Now, I know this is black and white and this is brown. So does that mean our jerseys make chocolate milk?
No.
No, just regular milk, of course. But the jerseys are pretty special. They're a little bit smaller than our Holstein dairy cows, and they don't produce quite as much milk, but their milk is pretty special. Do you know what's special about their milk?
They have more butter fat in their milk.
What does that mean?
It means their milk is a little bit more creamy. So they can use their milk for things
like cheese. For cheese for your sandwich. Do you see how that all ties together? So when you wonder about cheese, whether it's cheese on your sandwich or your macaroni and cheese or just your snack cheese and where it comes from, remember that these ladies, our dairy cows, Holsteins and Jerseys, are a very, very important piece to that cheese. Okay, let's see what we've got in our lunchbox next. How did your tomatoes get in your lunchbox? Last summer, your tomatoes were growing in a big plastic tunnel full of tomato plants. The sun and the warmth made the plants grow tall and bloom with yellow flowers. As each flower died, a teeny green tomato fruit began to grow from its middle. Day by day, the plants sucked up water and the tomatoes swelled from green to orange to red. When bunches of ripe scarlet tomatoes dangled from the branches, the grower picked them, sorted them, packed them, and sent them to the store. Pop one in your mouth and squish the sweet, sour juice out. Okay, so now we learned where the tomatoes come from. And I thought this was really cool because when you think of things coming from a farm, usually we think of things in an outdoor farm, out in a field, right? And so what was different about what we learned about the tomato farm versus the farms that we usually talk about? That's right, our tomatoes were grown inside. And do you remember what the building was called that they were grown in? A greenhouse. So here you can see one of the greenhouses that we have here in Arizona, and it allows for our farmers to control many of the things that they can't outside. And one of those is the temperature, right?
Which is
Our
really
climate.
important because, you know, in Arizona, the temperature can be really hot in the summer, and then in the winter, it can get cold in different places. So the greenhouses can control the temperature during different seasons to allow us to grow things.
You know what I thought was really cool the last time we went to this greenhouse, we were in there. They bring bee boxes into the greenhouse because just like outside where our fruits and vegetables have to be pollinated, they still have to be pollinated inside. So our farmers actually bring the bees inside the greenhouses so they can continue to pollinate.
Yeah, they're a very important part, the bees pollinating the flowers so they can have tomatoes.
Now, one of the things that I read in that story that just, it told me a tomato was a fruit. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Well, why is a tomato a fruit? Do you know why a tomato is a fruit?
Think about what's on the inside of a tomato.
Because it has seeds in it. These guys, you're so smart, right? All right, so our tomatoes can grow inside a greenhouse. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. All right, let's see what's next. How did your apple juice get in your lunchbox? Last spring, the apple trees in the orchard were full of flowers. In summer, teeny apple buds grew from each flower stalk. The buds kept growing, and by autumn, the trees were full of ripe, sweet fruit. Pickers climbed into the trees and filled their bins with fruit. A truck took the bins to the juice factory, where sorters threw out any rotten apples. Then a machine washed the rest and mashed them in a milling machine, seeds, skin, and all. A huge press squeezed the mash till all its juice ran out. A heater warmed up the juice to kill off any germs and poured it into cartons. Apple juice. I love apple juice.
I love apples.
I love apple juice. And of course we know they come from apples, right? And we know that an apple is a fruit because it has seeds in it. It actually has 5, which is super cool when you cut open that apple,
Looks
right?
like a star.
I like that. And what color can we get apples in? Of course, red. Like my shirt.
Green.
What other ones?
Yellow.
Or a combo.
Pink. Yeah,
right?
There's like a whole bunch of different
Honey
shades.
Crisps happen to be my favorite, and they are kind of a red and yellow
I like
together.
a red delicious apple.
Red delicious
Very
apples are good
sweet.
too. And in our story, we learned that apple pickers actually pick apples by hand. Now, we read that in the story, but do you think that's how it works on the farms too, that apples have to be picked by hand? You're right. They do. They have to be picked by hand. In fact, we had the opportunity to go to Apple Annie's during apple season and watch the apple harvest. And one of the things that they shared with us there is that there's just no really good mechanical way, or using a machine or some sort of device, to pick the apples without bruising the apples. So the apples are still picked by hand. And the other cool part about at Apple Annie's is not only can you pick apples, the farmers can pick the apples to sell to you, but you can go and pick the apples. Do you guys know what that's called when you can go to a farm and harvest the crop? A U-pick. Very good. And of course, we have those for apples here in Arizona, which is pretty special. All right, let's see what's next in our lunch. How did your carrots get in your lunchbox? Last spring, your carrots were growing in a field on a vegetable farm. You wouldn't have seen any carrots then, just long rows of feathery leaves. As the leaves grew taller in the summer sun, each carrot root pushed deeper into the earth, soaking up water and turning orange. By late summer, they had swelled so much that the top of each carrot poked out of the earth. Then the carrots were washed and packed into trucks. Bite into your carrot. See just how sweet and crunchy it tastes. Okay, so we just learned a little bit about carrots. And one of the things that the book shared with us is that carrots were orange. Is that true? But can carrots also be other colors?
Yeah, they have like purple carrots.
And yellow and white.
And like red carrots.
But the reason why we see mostly orange carrots in the grocery store is because that's what our large farms produce. And that's because they can grow them very uniform. And the reason why that's important is because most of us, when we go to the grocery store, we don't get the bunch of carrots like this, right? That's a bag that's got like 10 of these in it. Instead, we buy those little bagged baby petite carrots. Now, do those carrots grow that way? Just petite and cute and all shaved and nice? No. Those actually are processed from the large carrots. So our farmers grow all of the big long ones, and they'll use certain varieties that will grow a certain length and a certain diameter, right? And that allows them then, once those carrots are harvested, to go through a machine that actually will take the top outer layer of skin off and then chop them into those little bite-sized carrot nuggets, I like to call them, that we eat, right? That are super easy for snacking. But it is important to know that carrots are not just orange, but they're all the other colors. And it showed us in the book that the carrot is what part of the plant? The root. It grows underground.
That's why it said it's a vegetable farm where carrots are grown. Because we talked about tomatoes are fruit and apples are fruit because they have seeds.
So how do we know if something's a vegetable?
Are a vegetable because they're the root of the plant. So a vegetable is something we eat, a part of the plant that we eat that's the root,
the stem,
the leaves, the flower.
Okay. Learn something new. All right, let's find out what's happening in our lunchbox now. How did the chocolate chip in your cookie get into your lunchbox? Cookies are made from flour, sugar, and butter. And this one's got chocolate chips in it. Chocolate starts off as a bean. Well, lots of beans, which grow in pods on a cocoa tree. The pods are picked from the tree, then they're cut open and the beans are scooped out. These beans are spread out and left to dry in the sun. The dried beans are taken to a factory, sometimes on the other side of the world. In the factory, they're cleaned, roasted, and ground into a thick, sticky paste. Sugar's mixed in, so the paste gets sweeter, but it's still gritty, so it's squeezed, stirred, melted, and cooled. To make it really smooth, it takes a lot of work to make chocolate. Finally, The chocolate is molded into blocks. These are made into little chips that will melt in your mouth all over again. This is the favorite thing of mine that's in my lunchbox. And in fact, I have some with me today. Now, my cookies, though, they're not chocolate chip. They're M&M. Is that kind of processed in the same way? Does it come from the same place, M&M's?
Well, it's chocolate on the inside of it, right?
So the chocolate's the same. It just added an extra step with the candy shell, right? Mm-hmm. But the chocolate chip cookies are one of my favorites. And the cool part about chocolate chip cookies is we go back to the very first thing we learned about, and there's wheat in there too, flour. Because the flour, right? So our chocolate chip cookies not only have the flour, but they have to have butter, which also comes from the milk from our cows. And then we added the chocolate.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys see the bean right here? Like it talked about in the book? That's what they process, and they turn that into the chocolate.
Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can say this bean, right? So I've heard it in a couple of different ways, right? Mm-hmm. Some people just call it a cocoa bean, right? What's another way you've heard it?
Cacao bean.
Cacao bean, right? So there's different ways to say it. So just know that it comes from a bean, right? That comes from a
If I took this bean and went and just ate it right now, it wouldn't taste very good.
It'd be nasty.
Have you guys ever had like dark chocolate, really dark chocolate? Sometimes you get into your parents' chocolate. It's kind of bitter.
Yeah.
Right?
It's not as sweet.
Yeah.
Not as sweet.
Because it doesn't have the sugar added.
We like the sugar. Mm-hmm. Which also comes from a
plant.
Farm. Yeah. Right?
Okay. So sugar cane or sugar beet.
Right. Man, our food really does come from a farm, doesn't it?
Like all of it.
All right. Let's see what's next in our lunch. How did your clementine get in your lunchbox? Early in summer, the trees in the clementine grove were full of sweet-smelling, waxy flowers. As the flowers died, a teeny green clementine berry began to grow out of each one. The clementine swelled in the warm sun, turning from green to yellow. By the time cooler winter weather arrived, the clementines had turned orange and were so heavy and full of juice that they made the branches droop. Pickers climbed ladders to reach them. They had to wear gloves so they didn't bruise the tender fruit inside the skin. They washed them and packed them, and the grower sent the boxes in trucks to the market. It's easy to peel a clementine. Then all you have to do is pop the juicy pieces in your mouth and bite. Most clementines are seedless. Oranges. I like oranges.
So this is an orange. It's pretty big, but in the story they talked about clementines.
They're smaller.
They're like the smaller ones.
They're snack size. I like to call them snack size. You might also refer to them as cuties.
Or halos.
Cuties, halos, clementines.
And
those
you
are
can
the snack
peel
size.
them. They're really easy to peel. So that's why we put them in your lunchbox a lot, right?
And we also learned in the story something else very unique about those clementines. What don't they have in them? Seeds. Now, they're still a fruit, though. That's important to remember. Just because they're seedless doesn't mean they're not a fruit. They are still, in fact, a fruit. How many of you like to eat the cuties or halos, the clementines, in your lunch, right? Those are some of the best snacks, especially if you're doing a sport or you're outside and it's warm, and then you have a nice, juicy clementine. It's good.
They're a citrus fruit.
Citrus. We like citrus because that's one of Arizona's 5 C's. And just like we learned about apples, it's important to remember that our citrus is also harvested by hand. And that's because the fruit itself is pretty tender, right? It's delicate.
You can get bruised
And
easily.
so if it bruises, although it doesn't really mess with the fruit inside, usually that bruising will cause black spots on the outside, and most of us don't want an orange with black spots or a lemon with black spots, right? All right, very cool. Let's learn about what's next. You've eaten it all, from the first bite of bread to the last piece of fruit. It came from fields and farms, from orchards, from groves, and from dairies. So many people helped bring it to you. Farmers and bakers, cheese and chocolate makers, pickers, packers, and truck drivers. Now it's all in your stomach, starting to do the job that food does, helping you grow taller and stronger and giving you get up and go. Do you guys like that story?
I like it because it talks all about food.
And we love food. And it talks about lunch. And it's getting pretty close to lunchtime. In fact, my tummy is growling. Do you guys want to see what we brought in our lunch today? Well, I already showed you one thing, and I usually start with dessert. Shh, don't tell your parents. But I have my M&M cookies, which is one of my favorite. Miss Alicia, what do you have in your lunchbox?
There's a couple things. So I love pickles. So these are dill pickles, little slices.
Do we have pickle farms?
How do you make a pickle?
Cucumbers.
Cucumbers.
These kids are really smart.
But the variety we usually use for cucumbers are a smaller variety. They're called pickling cucumbers.
And do you guys know what state grows the most pickling cucumbers? Michigan. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I like dill pickles.
All right, and then my main lunch is a salad. I made a salad at home. Look at this salad.
That looks super good.
So there's a lot of things in this salad.
Let's see. I'm going to try and point to this here. I've got my wheat pointer. Can you guys tell me what this is? Do you know what this is?
Ooh, is that the avocado?
An avocado. Raise your hand if you like to eat avocados. Maybe you don't even know you're eating avocados, but avocado is in guacamole.
Mm-hmm.
And if I were to ask you if that was a fruit or a vegetable, what would you say? A fruit.
Because it has a big seed. We call it a pit. And they grow on a tree. Do we grow avocados here in Arizona?
Some people do in their backyard. Yeah, they might have one avocado tree.
A lot of them.
Not a lot of them. Not the ones that you're going to find at the grocery store. Okay, let me see. What are these cool little red? They look like little raisins. What are those?
Ooh, do you guys know what those would be? Not a lot of people put them in the salad, but cranberry. They're dried cranberries. They kind of give a little sweetness and a little tartness. You know, cranberries, sometimes you eat them during like Thanksgiving. So a really cool thing about cranberries is they grow like on these bushes. They're little like berries, but they float. So to harvest them, they fill that whole field with water, and then they have a machine that goes through, kind of combs it, and they float to the top. So they can kind of scoop them up. Isn't that neat?
Right now, that farm is underwater. All of those plants are underwater, so those cranberries float up. It's called a cranberry bog.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Pretty cool.
Do we grow cranberries in Arizona?
No. But you know what? I was watching a video about cranberry bogs and the harvest, and they said one of the craziest things about the harvesters who are out there waiting around in the water with the cranberries is all of the plants, just like on farms, there's insects, right? And there's spiders. Ooh. And so in the cranberry bogs, when they float all of the cranberries up, there are a lot of spiders out there too. And so some of the workers, that's their least favorite thing. That makes sense. But the spiders aren't going to hurt you, so it's okay. All right, let's find out another thing.
What's the main part of my salad made out of? Do you guys know?
What are those leaves? Spinach.
You guys like spinach
salad?
I love spinach.
You guys might sometimes have salad that's lettuce, a whole different variety of lettuces. But this particular one,
and we grow a lot of lettuce in Arizona.
Yeah, we're the winter lettuce capital of the world.
But what about spinach?
It's a leafy green.
Mm-hmm.
And we grow a lot of it.
Yeah. We're number 2 in the nation for spinach production. We grow a lot of spinach.
Yeah. It's a very, very healthy vegetable.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I also see some meat in there.
Oh, yeah.
And it comes from an animal that goes... Buck, 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 buck. It's the chicken.
So I put some chicken in my salad.
And then I see... Ooh. What's this thing in here? It's got kind of... What's this? Do you guys know what that is? It's a chunk of Artichoke. Do you guys eat artichoke? Artichokes.
Artichoke. What kind of, is that a fruit or a vegetable? What do you guys think? Are there seeds in artichokes? No. So artichokes are a flower. So if we kept it and let it keep growing, it turns into this really pretty purple flower. They're really pretty. You guys see how they grow in the field?
The inside of that does look exactly like what's inside your salad, right? So you got to get to the inside of that.
Yeah, they take all the outer layers off and then they just take the inside.
Yeah.
I like artichokes.
Man, this is just a healthy looking salad. I think there's some bacon in there too. Bacon, 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 bacon. Do you guys know where bacon comes from? Of course, it comes from our hogs, right? We do grow lots of pigs here in Arizona.
And then there's also tomatoes in there, but we talked about tomatoes already, right? And then...
Ooh, there are little teeny seeds in there. Sunflower seeds.
So the little kernels, sunflower seeds. Have you guys ever grown a sunflower in your backyard garden? Well, there's different varieties that you can grow that we eat. So we grow some sunflowers here in Arizona, but North Dakota grows the most sunflowers.
North Dakota. That is a hearty salad, Miss Alicia.
I'm excited to eat it for lunch.
There are lots of things in your salad. So, what else you got in your lunch?
Okay, the last thing I have in my lunch is a fig bar.
A fig bar? What's a fig?
Like a fig. Okay, a fig is a fruit.
Ooh.
Have you guys ever eaten a fig?
Looks like a Hershey kiss on a tree.
Kind of. And they're sweet. Okay. Have you guys, you can grow fig trees in Arizona. My neighbors have some in their yard. But they're a fruit. They have a lot of little seeds. But they're sweet. So I like them in my little fig bar. It's kind of like a granola bar, fig bar.
Well, I think we're just going to show them your lunch because her lunch is a lot healthier than my lunch. So we're going to just move on from that. Okay. All right.
I'm hungry now.
How did that get in my lunchbox? What did we learn today, friends? Where does food come from? It comes from a farm. Whether it's an animal farm or a crop farm, right? Everything from our grains to our fruits and our vegetables and our animal proteins come right from our farmers and ranchers here in Arizona. So the next time you're eating lunch, make sure you thank a farmer.